Sir, the Planning Commission, now the Niti Aayog, you've got members here of the Niti Aayog. You've gone over the budget fine print, as I know that you always do. Comments, questions, recommendations, suggestions?
Well, thank you very much, Shireen. Firstly, I believe it's a very good budget. I believe that the thrusts that the Finance Minister has put out in Part A are the right strategy for India at this time. It's the right strategy. But we always have concern in our country about implementation of our strategies, and I think that's where most of us would still have a concern. In that, I'm just picking a piece of the implementation. The Finance Minister did have one of the thrusts as improving governance in public policy. And in that, I did notice a lot being said about improving the delivery of government services and using IT and other things, smoothing that out. But in governance, I think to produce results in the country, we do need urban governance to improve. We need panchayat, village, district governments to improve. We need to have, since we are emphasizing small enterprises, the quality of management of clusters to improve in the country. Now, you may say, well, what can the Finance Minister do about it? And therefore, it is a larger question for Niti Aayog, and which is charged with this. But I think there's something that the Finance Minister could have done and may still do. One is direct allocations to these bodies, because they are starved for funds, and they can't build their capacities unless they start doing something with some funds. Secondly, don't just give them the funds, because they may waste the funds, build their capacities. So funds for building capacities of these cluster management, urban management, district management bodies, I think it's a priority for India right now, so that our budget allocations, which are fine, will produce results on the ground, produce efficient use of resources. So the question is, yes, I think they've got the right people here from Niti Aayog. I know they're working on that, and it is their charter.
Mr. Panagaria, Mr. Kant, you want to take that one, sir?
Well, you know, this is work in progress, and we certainly have been working with the states very closely. As a part of that, we go, in certain cases, all the way down to the Gram Panchayats. And also there is, of course, an effort underway to get the decentralization that has not happened yet, which is in the urban local bodies. I think, you know, here really ultimately, currently, as the situation stands, the matter is in the hands of the state governments.
Right.
So what we have to do is a lot of job of persuasion with the state governments, and possibly, you know, with some financial resources, if one could go, then persuade the state governments to relent.
Are your powers of persuasion working, Mr. Panagaria, so far? Between you and Mr. Kant, I know you can be pretty persuasive, so are the powers of persuasion working so far?
Pretty much. In most of the things that we have tried to do, we've tried to push through the Land Leasing Act. We had good success. Some of the labor law reforms that the states have done, we have tried to spread those. States generally, I must say that if you sit down with the chief ministers and their staff and discuss with them, states are actually, large number of their states are very much onto the ball game, and when they see a good idea, they generally respond very positively. And you know, you mentioned the coastal employment zones, and we've discussed it at the state level, and the states are extremely enthusiastic.
Okay. Anil?
This question is for Mr. Kant, actually. Just to give a little context, one of the key takeaways in this budget was the annulment of the plan, non-plan idea, and the moving to a revenue and capital expenditure. The implicit idea was you'll move to an outcome-oriented decision-making on rather funding system. But the Finance Minister in his speech snuck it there, saying that the Niti Aayog will do the monitoring part of this. So what is the mechanism that you'll have in place, and what will be the kind of transparency that, say, will you be doing quarterly outputs, status updates? Could you just elaborate?
You know, before I respond to this, I just wanted to respond to Shireen, that, you know, persuasion works up to a point, and beyond that, I think it's very important to rank states on performance, and especially on outcomes. One of the key things we've done, learning from what we've done on ease of doing business, is to create health outcomes, learning outcomes, and outcomes on water management. And in each one of them, we've created a dynamic portal where states can see them going up or down every day. And actually, our objective is really to rank the states on the performance of these outcomes.
Okay.
And actually, at the end of it all, put it in public domain and name and shame the states on performance. Unless you don't do this, people will not know whether the state leaders are performing or not. So it's very critical to do that.
So Mr. Panagaria is playing good cop, you're playing bad cop. So in the Niti Aayog, we get the picture now. I've got Mr. R. Chandrasekhar here, the president of Nasscom here with us. I don't know what you were expecting from the budget. I think what he was expecting was that there be no executive order from Donald Trump. So far, we haven't seen one. We've only seen a bill being moved in the House of Representatives on tightening the H-1B norms. What were your expectations, and what would you now like to see, given the fact that we're now living in the Trump times from the government? Maybe the Niti Aayog can take your suggestions on board.
Sure. Thanks, Shireen. Before I make a comment, I do want to say that from what I know of Amitabh Kant, he can't be a bad cop. But, you know, the budget, I think, without being flashy, has presented a certain continuity of certain priorities. And, you know, an emphasis on the farming and home sector, which hopefully would help in increasing the demand from the rural segment, which is important to drive things like digitization. But in terms of, you know, the continued emphasis on going digital, the continued emphasis on the startup ecosystem are welcome steps. The part which I think did come a little bit as a surprise was that given the kind of challenges which the IT sector, which is one of our crown jewels in the economy, is facing globally on account of you know, anti-globalization and protectionist forces, there were two specific suggestions which seemed quite reasonable when they were drafted by the industry. One was that there are certain tax incentives available to R&D. And today the need of the hour for the industry to equip itself for heightened global competition is to invest in technology, to build products and you know, develop newer technologies. So the request to extend tax benefits for R&D to IT, because currently it's available for every sector but not for IT. Okay. That is something which didn't happen. It was a bit surprising. And the second is, given, you know, all the usual challenges which are faced on transfer pricing, there was also a suggestion that the safe harbor margins are at such high levels that, you know, companies are not able to avail of that benefit. That rationalization in tune with international norms hasn't happened either.
Well, maybe
Shireen,
yes, go ahead.
You let Mr. Kant get away without replying, so can you?
How can I respond to, you know, very difficult to respond to you. Shireen never gave me a chance, you know. So one of the key things is in this budget, that there's a very integral component of the budget is this outcome budget, which we've prepared across ministries. And this is for the first time that we've done this. Niti has done this, a lot of hard work with the ministries, all the ministries. So there's clear defined outcomes for every single ministry. They all, and this will bring in good governance, this will bring in accountability. All this has been put on dashboard. It'll be regularly monitored on a monthly basis. So everybody will know.
So who are the outperformers, sir?
Well, you know, we've been doing this for quite some sectors for the Prime Minister, actually. And the road sector has been doing, so far, road sector has done quite well.
Okay, so the road sector continues to be the outperformer, yes.
Singh had,
Yes, Mr. Singh.
You know, Anil, I want to respond. This plan, non-plan, of course, mentioned, and Amitabh has brought out this issue of the outcome budget. But the other point which you mentioned about revenue and capital expenditure, I think that's an enormous mess. Frankly, the FRBM panel had debated the issue of abolishing this distinction between revenue and capital, just as the plan and non-plan have now been merged into a single component.
Okay.
We couldn't do it because in the Constitution, revenue and capital have been mentioned, but certainly the ingredients of what goes into revenue expenditure and what goes into capital expenditure, that we have recommended should be reworked out and rethought, because the expenditure, for instance, on education and on health, which is transferred to the states, is counted as revenue expenditure, and I think that that deserves really a reconsideration.
Okay, so that deserves reconsideration, revenue and capital expenditure, that distinction. Gentlemen, let me ask you now, I mean, the budget is over and done with. Mr. Kant, you know, Make in India is one aspect. Incredible India 2 is now being launched by the government. So let me start by asking you, we've talked a lot about tourism and the multiplier impact of focusing on tourism, etc. What should we realistically now expect? What will the focus be?
Well, I think good quality experience from the point of arrival to the point of departure is very critical, that you bring in really top class. India must become a great experiential destination. We still lack that. You know, I mean, we have a lot of problems you have great heritage, but the quality of experience on ground is very poor. So you need to improve the quality of your toilets. You need to ensure that airport experience is good. You know, all through, your guides are top class. You know, and these are experiences which need to be built in. And I think right from the point of arrival till the departure, it's very critical. But I think more than that, India has huge heritage sites. It has a wealth of heritage sites which no other destination has. We need to promote and market them very effectively. And I think Incredible India 2.0 should really look at a combination of several things. Good marketing-led growth, good infrastructure, top-class infrastructure, very good packaging, and of course, really good guides. I mean, top-class guides which enable India to be projected as a great, you know, the world is moving away from sun, sand, and sea to experiences. And, you know, India has that heritage, culture, which needs to be projected very prominently.
Well, we hope